Pursuant to section 31.015 Texas Natural Resources Code, I'm chairing this meeting in the commissioner's absence as chief clerk of the General Land Office, as the commissioner is away on state business. Should the commissioner return at the conclusion of the meeting, I will relinquish the chair to him. Good morning. August 24, 2021 School Land Board meeting will now come to order. Pursuant to the governor's executive order to avoid gatherings of more than 10, the governor's March 16, 2020 suspension of certain provisions of the Texas Open Meetings Act, the August 24, 2021 meeting of the School Land Board is being held today by video conference call. It is authorized under Texas Government Code section 551.125. Access to the meeting by members of the public was published in advance in the Texas Register in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Any member of the public who wishes to address the School Land Board on a matter within the authority should indicate so at the start of the meeting or during any public comment period. Being said, looks like first item on the agenda is number 1, approval of the minutes from the June 28, 2021 School Land Board meeting. If you've had a chance to review, is there a motion to approve?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve the minutes. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve.
Second, it's Michael.
The motion made, seconded, carries unanimously to approve the consent agenda as posted. Let's see, the third item is consideration and possible action to authorize publication for adoption of amendments to Texas Administrative Code.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Becky Petty from the Office of General Counsel. With me are Amy Nunez from Coastal Field Ops and Steve Rodriguez from Coastal Leasing. Agenda item number 3 is for the adoption of amendments to rules in Chapter 155. To summarize, the amended rule changes focus on adding a new definition to the chapter for living shore, streamlining the administration of easements for living shore, and proposing new rates and fees for commercial easements to reflect inflation and to come into line with rates charged by other Gulf Coast states. At its meeting on March 12, 2021, the School Land Board approved publishing these rule amendments in the Texas Register. The amendments were published for a 30-day public comment period, and comments were received in support of the living shoreline rule changes. No comments were received regarding the rent and fee changes. In a little more detail, the amendment to 155.1 adds a definition of living shorelines to update the code so that it will be consistent with terminology commonly used by other federal and state programs. There are also additions to section 155.3E. That amendment adds easements for living shorelines so long as they are less than 500 feet long to the type of instrument the commissioner may authorize without board approval. There are also several changes to section 155.15, including amendments to the fee tables that add living shorelines as a structure with no annual rent and add that breakwaters associated with living shorelines don't have any annual rent. The other amendments to section 155.15 increase rent and fees for commercial easements and leases. The amendments to fees for commercial and industrial activity will revise rent and fees for commercial and coastal easements in order to account for inflation since 1995, which was the last time rent and fees for this type of easement were modified. These changes will bring the rates in line with current market rates for other Gulf Coast states. In addition, the amendment adjusts the annual minimum rent for commercial and industrial activity from $100 to $500 a year. And also, under the amendment, fees for existing projects remain on the same 20% increase every 5-year schedule. If a project is modified outside of the current footprint, then the new rate change will take effect. And that summarizes the changes. And if there are any questions, we would be happy to answer them. Otherwise, staff respectfully requests that the board authorize publication of the amended rules for adoption in the next issue of the Texas Register.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
I don't have any.
All right, hearing, take a motion.
This Michael, so moved.
I'll second.
Motion is made, seconded, carries unanimously to approve item number 3. Item number 4 is an update on the de minimis policy we discussed previously. Nick, do you want to play this?
Good morning. Yes, sir. Nick Orman with the Office of General Counsel. As Mark said, item 4 is an update, or it's more as an informational item and a possible update of the school land board's de minimis sales policy. If you recall, at the last meeting, the board adopted a policy whereby de minimis sales are to be considered by the board as consent items rather than individually considered. In fact, we had one today on the consent agenda. And to qualify, a sale must be for a total purchase price not to exceed $75,000, among other things. But the policy is attached to the memo for convenience and was adopted as written. But prior to adoption, some members expressed an interest in how many transactions would have qualified over the course of the past 12 meetings. So I provided those numbers in the memo, along with 2 hypothetical higher ceilings should the board wish to increase the not to exceed cap. Of the 82 individually considered items over the course of the last 12 meetings, 11 would have qualified as de minimis sales under the current policy. So that's 13.4%. There's a breakdown in there of the kinds of transaction, whether it's tax foreclosure, excess, vacancy, or sovereign sale. And should the board wish to increase that not to exceed amount, there's numbers for $100,000, which would have included 13 of the 82 items. That's 15.8%, and $150,000 would have 17 items. So that would have been 20.73% of the individually considered items. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, I just wanted to present these numbers and the 2 hypothetical caps should the board wish to take action.
And again, just for clarification, Nick, even if we move up to the 100 or the 150,000, it looks like it doesn't impact that many more cases. But if there is, these are just purely by the book. I mean, if there's something off or question, regardless of the dollar value, it would come to the board.
Yes, sir. There's more detail in the actual policy itself. You know, it's at or above appraised value without the expectation of associated litigation. Will close within 100 days of approval with a standard reservation. So anything that is unique in any way is individually presented. And also the board has the ability to just flag a transaction and pull it for individual consideration as well.
This is Scott Rorman. So it looks like it would decrease, on average, a little over 1 decision a month, which is something. But the other question I have is, would it speed up the board responding to third parties? In other words, right now, maybe it takes 45 days to get a request and get it on the agenda and get it voted on. Would this help speed up responses to third parties?
I'm not sure. I think a lot of the delay is in when we hold meetings. I mean, the same information will be presented in the memos. It's just not going to be an individual item that we deliberate in executive session and go through, in painstaking detail. I don't think it'll speed up necessarily the transactions from when there's an offer made to acceptance, though.
Because it has to go on the consent agenda?
Yes, sir. It still has to be approved by the board, so we still have the lag there between board meetings.
I may have misunderstood Todd, but I was thinking he was trying to get this pushed down to staff level and not come to the board.
I was.
Okay. I think the problem there, and this was our opportunity to maybe prevent the board from spending a lot of time on these issues, but statutorily the board is required to approve these items. So we would have to we'd have to investigate and do some due diligence on what we can delegate to staff.
This is Jeff. That actually would require a legislative fix.
Okay,
Because the board is required to any disposition of property is going to require board approval. There are certain other provisions in Natural Resources Code, like some leasing events, which would allow the commissioner alone to make those decisions. But these types of decisions, no matter how small, require board approvals. So it won't go faster to third parties in the sense that it'll still be tied to board meetings, but hopefully it will continue to streamline board meetings because we won't need to discuss these things in an executive session and in that regard.
and I guess you could probably communicate to those third parties that it will be placed on the consent agenda.
Right, which they already communicate to them that every transaction hinges on board approval in that regard.
I guess what I'm saying, Jeff, is indifferently, which is based on current policy, given the size of this transaction, it will be placed on the consent agenda versus will be discussed by the board.
Yes, they certainly can communicate that.
Yeah, yeah.
So we presented this, we've posted this item for the board to not only just approve the update, but also to allow them to, if you do want to make a change, the agenda posting for today would allow you to do that. We could keep it whatever y'all prefer.
I don't feel strongly about 75 versus 100. I probably would stop there. I wouldn't go to 150, but I'll defer to my colleagues on that.
I would feel comfortable with the 100,000.
I move to go to 100,000 and all the other words necessary to make the motion.
So for the record, there's a motion to approve the school land board's de minimis sales policy, the dollar amount to 100,000.
What Mark said.
Yeah, I'll second.
Motion is made, seconded, carries unanimously. Thank you, Nick. Next up.
Well, yeah, Nick, I think there's probably more work there than we may recognize. So thank you for doing that. I think it was helpful and it doesn't go unnoticed.
Sure, happy to help.
All right, next item is number 5, possible action on a contract with EnergyNet Services.
Morning, Robert Hatter with Energy Resources Division. Yes, as Mark said, item number 5 is consideration action on an online lease sale company to perform our lease sales that we do for oil and gas. Currently, EnergyNet Services LLC provides the online services for conducting GLO oil and gas lease sales. That current contract expires on August 31st of this year. So staff issued an RFP to determine if they were the best provider, and EnergyNet was the only respondent to that RFP. Since the date that we first used EnergyNet, the permanent school fund has received over $300 million in bonuses. EnergyNet's also used by University Lands, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Colorado, Utah, and the BLM. So their staff thinks that they're the appropriate provider to go forward. And so staff, therefore, respectively request board approval for a new 5-year contract with EnergyNet Services LLC that would commence on September 1st of this year. Be happy to answer any questions.
And Hatter, the no terms have changed from the current contract, and this is still at no charge to the school land board, correct?
Yes, sir. It'll be under the same contractual conditions as we had on the previous contract. And there will be no charge to the GLO or the PSF for their services. They're paid through a bidder's premium that's paid between 1% and 1.25% of the total bid, depending on the size of the bid.
And was the prior contract for 5 years as well?
Yes, sir. Originally, it was for 5 years back in 2015, and then I came to the board last year to get a 1-year extension on that.
Okay.
So we can perform the January sale, but this will be a new contract starting September 1st.
Okay. I don't have any questions. I'll move to approve.
I would second that. Motion is made, seconded, carries unanimously for item 5. Item number 6 will be an executive session. School Land Board will enter into executive session pursuant to Chapter 551, Subchapter D, Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code for discussion and consideration regarding pending or contemplated litigation and or settlement offers, or to seek or receive attorney advice or counsel related to item number 6 on the docket, and subsection 551.072 for discussion and consideration concerning the purchase, sale, exchange, lease, or value of real property related to items number 6 on the docket. Following the executive session, the board will reconvene in open session to complete the docket. All right, open session of the August 24, 2021 School Land Board meeting will resume with item number 6.
Good morning, Board. Ken Mills. I'm the Director of the Oil, Gas, and Energy section in the Office of General Counsel. Pursuant to Texas Health and Safety Code, sections 382.501 and following, and pursuant to earlier board action, GLO staff issued a request for proposal for the lease of submerged land in Jefferson County for the establishment and operation of a geologic carbon dioxide storage repository. Following the issuance of that RFP, we received 12 responses from 7 different respondents, and that's because 2 of the respondents submitted multiple proposals. Those proposals were scored according to criteria that was set out in the RFP, scored by a committee of GLO staff. Then all the scoring was taken and a cumulative average was made by procurement staff separate from the review committee. And following that scoring and averaging, the highest score was a proposal submitted by Talos Energy and Carbon Vert. It was their C proposal, which proposes leasing approximately 40,380 acres in the submerged land in eastern Jefferson County, pursuant to terms that are laid out in that RFP. So with that, GLO staff recommends to the board that it award a lease to Talos, the Talos Carbon Vert combination, for a project consistent with its proposal C, and authorize GLO staff to negotiate a lease with Talos that is consistent with this memorandum, with the RFP, and with the Talos C proposal. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And thank you, Ken. To be clear, this awarding the winner of this RFP, authorizing staff to enter into a lease, and then you will come back to the board with the final terms of the lease before we move forward with this.
That is correct.
Any questions from the board?
None here.
None here. This is Michael. I move that we adopt the proposal, the staff recommendation.
I would second that motion. Like the motion is made, seconded. Have a record vote on that. Any concerns, questions, or we have a aye vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Got it. Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve item number 6. I would like to thank Ken and all of the staff that put this RFP together. I know this was one of the first in its kind in not only the state, but the world, and they're kind of entering into new ground here. So I appreciate all the hard work that is being done and that will continue to be done on this. So thank you. That's it. There being no further business, the meeting is adjourned.
Wait, may I make a comment, Mark?
Yes, sir.
I just want to, we probably don't thank staff enough. I just want to thank the staff. I mean, I could go on and on about all the hard work that's being done, but today I just want to point out Stephanie Crenshaw. She answers my emails or questions within 5 minutes, and this is always on top of things. So Stephanie, thank you.
Well said.
Welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you.
I would second and third that, Scott. So I would agree with you. All right, now there being no official other business before the school land board, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.